Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me again today. Today I'm going to be talking about the inner critic that we all have. So everybody has an inner critic, and it is going to be a different message for everybody. Our inner critic is something that's developed over time and is usually an adaptive strategy to help protect us, right? And so typically what happens is we are not born with this inner critic. We are not born thinking anything negative about ourselves or the world around us. But given our experiences from childhood on, we can develop these negative beliefs and this inner critic. And so the voice of the inner critic is really, its job is to keep you safe from harm, to keep you safe from disappointment, from shame, guilt, failure, all of that. It wants to keep you safe and secure in this little space, okay? And so typically what happens is as we are growing up and experiencing life, we go through these different stages. So there is a psychologist who talks about the developmental stages or psychosocial stages. It's Erikson Stages. And it's broken down into different age groups and different tasks that we have to master at each different stage. So for example, as a baby, we either master trust or mistrust. Okay, and the way that that's mastered is, do we get what we need from our caregivers? So are we fed? Are we held and loved? Are we changed? Do our parents or caregivers respond to us when we have a need? If yes, then typically we start to develop trust in the world. If no, then we tend to not develop trust in the world or other people. Okay. There are different stages all throughout our life. What we look for is where we didn't meet those tasks. So in therapy, what I'm looking for is where was there an opportunity to master a task or a skill and it didn't happen. So that could be trust versus mistrust. Another one we look at is independence versus dependence. We look at coming up with your own individual identity and how you compare yourself to other people of, do I fit in, do I not fit in? How's my outlook on life? And shame and guilt. Okay, so that's a very simplified version of Erikson Stages. But I think it helps because typically when we haven't met a task or when there's been a trauma or an injury, that's when you start to see these negative cognitions or that inner critic get loud. And so typically what I see in therapy, what I see from clients or what I hear from clients for inner critics, and I'm going to go through the most common ones. That does not mean that this is an exhaustive list. So I might have one that totally fits for you, or there might be some that you're already thinking about that I don't mention. That's okay. Just pay attention to what that negative message is that you tell yourself anytime that you're stressed, anytime that you feel like you didn't do a good enough job or you feel like you should have done better. If there's a big change, if there's a disappointment, if there is any type of failure or something like that, pay attention to what that voice says. Pay attention to what that message is, okay? So the most common ones that I hear are, I'm not good enough, I'm too much, I'm not worthy, I'm not important, I'm not loved, I'm not lovable, I'm bad, I'm weak, there's something wrong with me, I'm broken, I can't trust. And usually that's I can't trust other people and I can't trust myself. I don't trust myself, or I'm not safe, right? It doesn't feel safe. I can't depend on anybody. And so a lot of those are going to sound the same. As I'm saying that, you might think those all sound the same or they sound like they could fit together, and they can. Whenever that presents in session, what I'm looking for is, where did that come from? Where did that message come from? And again, we didn't know that as a baby. We were not born with that. So somewhere in our life, we learned that message, okay? We learned that as an adaptive strategy. So typically what I would do with a client is I would ask them, where did you hear that? When do you think that started for you? And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing now as you're watching this. What is that negative narrative? What is that negative message? And think back over your whole life. When did you first feel that way or think that about yourself? Okay? When was the worst time you thought that way about yourself or felt that way about yourself? Who gave you that message? Who did you hear that from? And it might not have been as direct as what your inner critic is saying. It could have been little tiny messages along the way that made you feel that way. Okay? So thinking of, like, if there's a negative belief of I'm stupid, It might not have been a parent or teacher calling you out saying you're dumb, you're stupid, you're never going to amount to anything. It might have been even something as simple as you comparing yourself to your best friend who always got better grades in school. Okay, it could be anything like that. So just start to make those connections of where that came from. Then what I want you to do is I want you to identify what you would want that critic to say. So not even a critic. I want to change that voice from a critic to like a cheerleader, right? A coach, a motivational speaker, somebody who's really going to motivate you and want the best for you and is going to cheer you on and help push you to be the best version of you that you can possibly be. What would you want that voice to say? What would you want that person to say? How much does that fit? Have you heard that before from either yourself or other people? Have you gotten that feedback before? Okay. Then I want you to look at what's getting in the way. What's getting in the way of me believing that? And spend some time with that. Maybe think and reflect on that for about 5 or 10 minutes of where does that come from? Typically, that's going to connect back to some of those things earlier in life where maybe you received a negative message from a parent or a sibling or a family member or a teacher or a first love, a best friend, somebody. Understand where it came from. And then you can look and think, does that still fit today? Does that fit today, right now, in this situation? Okay. Then I want you to create a plan for change. So if I don't want to feel this way, what can I start to do to give myself reinforcement in a positive direction, right? So if I don't want to feel like, I don't want to feel like I'm bad, what can I do every day to start to do things that make me feel good about myself? So I hope that helps. I will share a personal example. So one thing that, and I have a couple negative inner critic voices that pop up that I am continuously working on. So one of the things that comes up for me is I'm not important, right? Or I'm not a priority. I don't know if I said that in my normal list, but we can add that to what I said of common negative beliefs. So mine, I will sometimes think like I'm not important. And that will come out in the dumbest ways in my marriage and my family. And it's not even like it's laughable at this point because I know exactly where it's connected to, even though like logically it doesn't connect, right? So if you're a current client of mine, you probably have heard the story, so just you can fast forward if you want to, or you can listen to it again and just laugh at me. That's okay. But the trash is a really big deal in my house. I refuse to do the trash. Yes, I'm a spoiled brat when it comes to that because I refuse to do it. So my husband, like it's his job to do the trash. I refuse to do it. And so for the longest time, when I would come home from work and the trash would be overflowing, that hurt part of me of feeling like I wasn't important would get triggered because it's like, well, if I was important to him, he would take the trash out. He would know this and he would take the trash out. Okay. Again, logically, that doesn't fit. Emotionally, my inner critic made that fit. It put those pieces together, even though it didn't logically make sense. And so what I had to do was really look at, okay, that feeling not important is not connected to him. That's something from way in my past. Okay, and I'm not going to go into details about where and all that because I don't want to bore you with all that information. But I have to be able to almost like detach those two, right? So having the trash not emptied when I come home does not mean that I am not important to my husband. And what I can do is I can look at all the different ways that I am important, all the different things that he does to show me that I am. And I can run through like, what's the evidence that I'm not important? What's the evidence that I am, right? And then I can say, okay, this trigger right now, that's my stuff. That's my stuff from childhood that I can keep working on. And so I have worked on it. And then I come home and the trash is still not emptied most of the time. And I can laugh about it. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to divorce him because he doesn't think I'm important and he never takes the trash out. But in the beginning, it would hit that spot and it would be really raw and it would be really charged. Okay, so you can see how my inner critic and my trigger didn't match the actual trigger, right? So my reaction and how badly that hurt didn't match that the trash was overflowing. And so you might think of things and ways that that's played out for you and where you're noticing almost that disconnect or that overreaction or that overhurt and understand where it came from. As you're doing that, you're going to start to notice those connections a lot more and you're going to have more control over it. If you find that you're getting stuck and you need more help, please, please, please reach out to us. We would love to help you do that. There are quite a few of us here that do EMDR, so it's a form of trauma therapy or a way to help your brain heal itself from those negative thoughts, or brain spotting, which is similar to EMDR, but I think better than EMDR. We do trauma therapy, which can tie back into those negative beliefs. Because if you think of it, anytime we don't master something or we have that negative voice, that inner critic, that negative belief, it tends to come from a trauma. And it doesn't have to be a really big trauma. It can be something really small that our body and our mind perceives as a threat. So we can help with that. We also do attachment theory, which is also great for doing that inner work as well. So if you feel like you're struggling and you can't get past or you can't clear out one of those negative voices or that inner critic, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you with that. And please, please, please know that it's normal. Everybody has one. We're all doing the work to heal, or I hope we're all doing the work to heal so that we can feel better. And if you have that, or because you have that, please don't think that there's anything wrong or bad with you. We all have it, and it's